Also, if you are brand new, then you haven't been through Deuteronomy with us, and so I will tell you briefly. Next week we'll show a video that really will give us a really good overview of Deuteronomy. It's something that we looked at the beginning of our series through Deuteronomy, but I'll show it again next Sunday. But if you are brand new to Deuteronomy, I'll just briefly tell you, here's what's going on. I'll give you the big picture really quickly. You got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the first 5 books of the Bible. You got Genesis. At the end of Genesis, you got these people that moved to Egypt. Well, when you get to Exodus, the very next book, what you find out is that those people, after a few hundred years, actually ended up becoming slaves in Egypt. And what happens in Exodus is that God rescues the people from slavery using this guy named Moses. Okay? Moses leads them out of Egypt, out of slavery. And then, so that's Genesis and Exodus. Now you've got Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy where we're at. Those 3 books, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, that's actually the story of the people traveling from Egypt to the land of Canaan, which was also called the Promised Land. Why was it called the Promised Land? Because God promised that land to the people. And so it's that journey. And we're in Deuteronomy. In Deuteronomy, what's happening is that Moses knows that he's going to die very, very soon. And these people are going to have to go into the Promised Land without him. But they are going to have a leader. His name is Joshua. But what Moses is doing is he's reminding them of all the things that he has taught them. Today he will remind them of their shady past, because everybody's got a shady past, right? Even if you got saved when you were 2 years old. Before that, you were an absolute brat, right? Shady, okay? Everybody's got different levels of shadiness, you know. The older you get, anyways, let's just move on. But here's the deal. Here's what the series through Deuteronomy, this is what it's called, is reminders. Just very simply, reminders. Now, this is a reminder, looks very familiar to you probably, because you probably have reminders like this on your phone, or at least I got lots of them. Reminders to remind myself of something. But reminders, and the reminder for the people in the book of Deuteronomy, and even for us, is to keep loving God. Now that sounds strange. It's like, why would we need a reminder to do that? Like, we know we're supposed to do that. Yes, we know we're supposed to do that. But remembering to love God or honor him can sometimes be an entirely different matter. Oftentimes we as Christians can even live as if there is no God at times and moments. And we can go off and do something stupid or do something sinful and forget that, oh goodness, you know, I was supposed to honor the Lord and I didn't do that. And so we need reminders. The people needed reminders. And that's what Moses is doing. He's reminding them, when you get into the Promised Land, you got to remember to keep loving God. That's it in a nutshell. Okay? So we'll be looking at Deuteronomy chapter 9, and it is broken up this way. 2 main divisions, verses 1 to 6. That's the VV. Verses 1 to 6 is reasons for their future success. God is telling them ahead of time, you're going to go into the Promised Land. You will be successful. The reason for the success is what we're going to look at in that section. And then the remainder of it, beginning at verse 7, all the way down to the bottom, verse 29, is a retelling or a reminder of their rebellious history. Because these people had a history of being rebellious. Now, what a way to start off. You know, if you're just coming in brand new, hearing this Deuteronomy series for the first time, what a way to start off. We're talking about a people that have a shady past, and here we're told that they have a rebellious history. And yet, these are God's people. These are the Jews. These are the Israelites, the children of Israel. And so God knew that they had a shady past, and yet God continued working, and so we'll look at all of that this morning, okay? So we're going to obviously start with verses 1 to 6, which is the reason for their future success. Let's find out what that reason for their future success will be. Hear, O Israel, he says in verse 1. You are to cross over the Jordan. Now the Jordan at this point for these people, that's the border, okay? on the southern part of our own country, we have a partial wall, right? There's a wall down there or fence or, at certain places it's a river. For these people, they're standing at the Jordan River or sitting or whatever. They're camped out there at the Jordan River, waiting to cross over into the Promised Land. On the other side of that river, the River Jordan, is the Promised Land. And so Moses addresses them with that in mind. Hear, O Israel, you are to cross over the Jordan today. That's the Jordan River. And go in to dispossess nations. Okay? We'll find out why he wanted these nations dispossessed. That doesn't sound fair to me. Why is God sending them into the land of Canaan and telling them to go dispossess people that are already in that land? That doesn't sound fair. That doesn't sound loving. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Hear, O Israel, you are to cross over the Jordan today and go in to dispossess nations. Notice how he describes them. Nations greater and mightier than yourself. How's that for the start of a pep talk? Imagine yourself in the locker room or courtside, and you're getting ready to go in and play this opponent, and your coach says to you, all right, let's gather up here. I just want you to know that that other team is greater than you are. That doesn't sound like a very good pep talk. And yet we know that from history, that has oftentimes been the case. Some of the greatest sports pep talks have been within that scenario. A team that is the underdog, a team that, there's just no way that they can beat this other team. And then the coach steps up, gathers everybody up and says, listen, here's the reality. This team is greater than yours, and, they're faster, and they pitch faster, and they hit better, or they can run faster, or they can shoot more three-pointers, whatever. And it's like, this is the reality. But this is what we're going to do. And then the attention turns to you, and your team. And, but this is what we're going to do. And you go through the game plan, or your coach goes through the game plan. Well, Moses is telling them, he starts out by saying, listen, you're going in to dispossess nations that are greater and mightier than yourself. And then he goes on to their cities, not only the people, but the place. And he tells them the places where these people live, look what he says, the cities are great and fortified up to heaven. Up to heaven. In other words, they've got walls bigger than you've ever seen, is what he's telling them. You can't penetrate these walls. You're not going to be able to just go scale the wall, climb over it, and go in and conquer. These are walls taller than you've ever seen. And then he says in verse 2, he describes the people again, a people, and he gets specific, great and tall. The descendants of the Anakim, whom you know, and of whom you heard it said, who can stand before the descendants of Anak? And so they've even heard rumors about these people. The descendants of Anak, evidently they were taller than normal. And the rumor was, who can stand before the descendants of Anak? Who can beat these people? And so maybe you find yourself on a basketball team or something like that, and you know that you're going into CIF. And now it's like, oh man, now we're gonna play, the team from LA. Oh, the team from LA. If they're from LA, that just means they're taller, they're faster, they're meaner, they're whatever. They're way better because everybody's better in LA or whatever. All those things go through your mind. Like, oh, this team, man, they just never lose. And it's hard to keep a good attitude, positive attitude in that scenario. You just feel like, man, I'm defeated already. And I've seen that lots of times over the years, been involved in sports. When I was young, years ago, I actually used to play sports. I actually used to be able to run. I know, I used to be able to run. But I used to play sports. And then I had kids, and they all played sports, and my youngest still plays sports. And I even hear her say, she's college age now, college level soccer. And I hear her even sometimes saying, oh man, we got to play, hey, who are you playing this week? Oh, we're playing, so-and-so from Colorado or whatever. And, oh man, they're so good. I don't know, I think we're going to get beat. I even hear that from her. And I'll have to remind her, hey, knock that off. Like, come on, you got a good team. Or, come on, you guys, somebody's got to beat these people, right? Every great team gets beat at some point. Somebody's got to beat them. But Moses starts off with the reality of the situation. And it is always good to see the reality, to look at the reality and go, well, no, this is just how it is. The truth is they are taller than us, or they are bigger than us, or maybe you're more along the academic side. Maybe it's, like debate club, or maybe you're whatever. There's some kind of competition there academically. And oh man, those people, yeah, they come from this school or that team or whatever. Spelling bee, you see these spelling bees from time to time, that happen. And, oh, this person there, yeah, they go to this school, or they're homeschooled, man, and they can spell, right? And you get that in your mind that, oh man, there's just no way. But they're looking at reality. And so Moses begins this pep talk by saying, listen, this is the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation is these people, as far as their armies, their numbers, their cities, even the height of the people, the size of them, they're greater than you. They're taller than you. They're more fortified than you are. I mean, you're talking to people, Moses is talking to people that are living in tents. And they're getting ready to go into the promised land and fight against people that are living in cities. You got no city. It's not like city to city warfare. It's like tent to city warfare. No thanks. They're living in canvas tents, or, animal skin tents or whatever. And it's like, no, these aren't going to do anything against these fortified cities. You ever stop to think about that when you're camping in a tent? I love camping in tents. It's funny how safe you can feel in a nylon tent. That nylon tent, man, if you breathe hard on it, it'll rip, right? And yet at night, you get tucked in there, man, and then if you hear something, walking around the tent, you're like, oh, you feel so safe because you're inside or whatever. And it's funny how we can be deceived that way. And so Moses is giving them a reality. He's like, hey, you're going into the promised land, and there's fortified cities, and by the way, you're living in tents. It's like, oh, yeah, thanks for the reminder. Okay? So what Moses is trying to point out is that, listen, you do not have, he's telling them, you do not have what it takes to defeat these people on your own. You cannot do it. And you go, wait, where's this study going? Man, like where are we going with this thing? Well, the next thing that he does in verse 3 is he tells them, now remember, we're looking at the reason for their future success. Well, right away we know, and we'll point this out, we'll get real specific in just a minute. We're very quickly figuring out that these people are probably not the reason for their future success. But let's talk first about what is or who is. Look at verse 3. Therefore, okay, so because of these things, understand today that the Lord your God is he who goes over before you as a consuming fire. Now we're getting somewhere, right? Now I like this. Yeah, we're too weak. We are we're insufficient. We're not going to be able to beat these people in the promised land. So what are we doing here? And then Moses points out, however, God is going before you, and he's a consuming fire. And all of a sudden, that hope begins to be restored. Like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe we can be successful. Now, I've got a favorite soccer team. It's called LA Galaxy, okay? And that would mean that your favorite soccer team is also LA Galaxy, okay? If it's not, don't come back next Sunday. Just kidding. But anyways, LA Galaxy, for the last several seasons, has really, really stunk. They're terrible. Like, bottom of the what's called bottom of the table terrible, okay? But that doesn't matter, okay? Still right here, okay? But a couple of years ago, in the middle of this funkiness that we were in, all of a sudden, man, we caught word. Those of you that are familiar with soccer at all, there's always transfers taking place and stuff, and you get all these new players. Well, all of a sudden, we caught word that this guy named Zlatan was coming to LA Galaxy. Now, this is crazy, okay? This is like superstar status. The guy was, he just recently retired, but he'd been playing for years. All these incredible teams, championships, the whole thing. So it's like, what? LA Galaxy's getting Zlatan, we were so excited. And what happened was he came in during the season had already started. And we're playing, LA Galaxy, we're playing this team, this horrible team named LAFC, okay? Nobody cares about them. But anyways, okay? We're playing this like the crosstown rivals, okay? And so, you know, obviously we want to beat them so bad. And this is Zlatan's first game that he's eligible for. You know, got into the country, visa, all that kind of stuff, and now he's eligible to play in this game. But he's not in yet. And we get scored on twice. Okay, and we're just like, oh man, this is the worst ever. And you know, it's like we're, you know, from home we're yelling at the TV like, you know, put Zlatan in, put Zlatan in. And then all of a sudden, you know, here comes the sub. Zlatan comes in. Okay, now, okay, what's he gonna do? All right, okay, you know, we're all excited. And one of our midfielders gets a header, boom, ball bounces out, and basically they probably were like, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 yards away from the net, from the goal, and the ball bounces. Zlatan he's like this huge man. I think he's probably like 8 feet or something. I don't know how tall he is, but he's like well over 6 feet, and he's just a massive man. And the ball bounces. He just pounds this ball, and it goes right over, I mean, just flies across the field, right over the keeper, couldn't get to it, keeper falls down, ball goes into the net, and we just go berserk in my house, you know, and jumping all over the place and whatever else. He ends up scoring again. We end up winning the game. We came away from that game just like, I remember saying, we're going to the playoffs, baby. Going to the playoffs. We didn't make the playoffs that year. But in that moment, our hope was restored. Why? Because we have this giant of a man on our team. We got somebody on our side, like they can beat the bad guys, LAFC, man, we're going all the way or whatever. In that moment, hope was restored. And so these people, they're hearing the reality of their situation, like the people that you're going to defeat, you know, they're greater than you are. Their cities are greater than you are. And they have the descendants of Anakim. They're giants, and there's just nothing you can do about it. But then Moses immediately tells them, however, you do have God. And not only do you have God, and not only is he going with you, but he's actually going before you even get there. And then once he gets there, he's a consuming fire. And he goes on to explain to them in verse 3, he will destroy them, the people that are there, and bring them down before you. So you shall drive them out and destroy them quickly, as the Lord has said to you. I want you to picture washing dishes. Who hates to wash dishes? Anybody? Anybody hate to wash dishes? Okay. I actually don't hate it. Do I enjoy it? I'm somewhere in between. Like, I don't, it's not my favorite thing to do, but I don't mind it at all. Wash dishes, not a big deal. Okay? But imagine it's your turn to wash dishes. Okay? And you're really thankful that you have a dishwasher at home, huh? But let's say it's your turn to wash dishes, and but then let's say that somebody else shows up, your brother or your sister, or maybe even your mom or your dad. And they're like, hey, you walk into the kitchen, you know it's your day to wash dishes, but they're in there scrubbing the dishes. Okay? And scrubbing the dishes down, and then they put them in the sink, and you come in, you're like, hey, what are you doing? It's like, well, I decided to wash them for you. I love you. I want to bless you. I'm washing the dishes. I just need you to rinse them. Now, all of a sudden, your attitude gets better, huh? Like you came in with a bad attitude, and now it's like, oh, rinse? I can rinse. I love rinsing, right? Now you're ready to rinse. Well, Moses is explaining to them, listen, God is going to go into the land before you. When he goes in, he's going to be a consuming fire. And in fact, he will destroy the people that are there. He's going to destroy them and bring them down before you. In other words, he's going to get in there and wash the dishes, get all that crusty stuff scrubbed off. And then look at this. So you shall drive them out and destroy them quickly. He's essentially telling the Israelites, by the time you get into the land, the people are done. All you're going to have to do is just kind of sweep up a little bit. Get them out of the way. And we see that later on when they cross over in the book of Joshua. And how many of you know the story of Jericho? Right? Joshua fought the battle of Jericho, right? Jericho. And they're marching around the city, and the walls fall. It's incredible stories. It's obvious that God is before them and that he's a consuming fire. Now, here's what we find out so far. What is the reason for their future success? Well, The Israelites themselves, the children of Israel, they can't compare with the people that are in the land of Canaan. They're too weak. They don't have the resources. They can't do it. So what we do find out is that God is going to go and do the work. So we do know that the reason for their future success is God. But why is God doing it? Why is God doing that? It must be because God just likes the Israelites so much, right? The Israelites are so lovable. They're just huggable, like the teddy bear that's in the back window over there. And they're just so cute, right? And then what happens is, see, you and I, we think the same thing. Well, of course. Somebody tells you, hey, God loves you. You go, well, of course. Look at me, right? That's how we think. Like, of course. Why wouldn't he? Look how great I am. Look how smart I am. Look how fast I can run or whatever. We look at our own abilities. Well, Moses is telling them, listen, God is going to be the reason for your future success. However, it's probably not for the reason that you think. Verse 4, do not think in your heart, after the Lord your God has cast them out before you, saying, because of my righteousness the Lord has brought me in to possess this land. So Moses stops them before they even get started. See, because they know now, from verses 1 through 3, that they don't have what it takes to defeat these people. So he says, when God does defeat the people, and you go in, what will probably happen is the people will probably go, well, we didn't have what it takes, but God was fighting for us. God destroyed the people because he loves us so much, because look how cool we are. Look how great we are. And that's what they would tend to think. So Moses stops them before they can even get there, and he says in verse 4, don't think to yourself, because of my righteousness, the Lord has brought me in to possess this land. And then he tells them why God is, what he's doing. Why God is going to make them successful in the future. Verse 4, but it is because of the wickedness of these nations that the Lord is driving them out before you. Now, we do not have enough time to go into this, but a couple of weeks ago, when we were going through the previous chapter, chapter 8, we talked about why God was destroying the people in the land of Canaan. Because it sounds unfair. Well, the people are already living there. Why would God go in and destroy them and move them out? Well, we found out from previous Leviticus and Numbers, we found out that the people in the land were involved in all sorts of wickedness. Some of the most heinous of their crimes was the sacrifice of children, babies. They would put those babies, they had a statue named Molech, and it was an image of this supposed god, this idol, with arms that stuck out like this. And they would start a fire underneath and heat up Molech, and then they would actually sacrifice babies on those two arms, burn them to death. You can fact check. You don't have to believe me. Look it up for yourself. But that's one of the things that the Canaanites were involved in. You know that there are actually historical sites that they have found from the land of Canaan, from the Canaanites, where they find maybe like a neighborhood or whatever. They find Canaanite houses, and they have found within the walls, in the corner of the house, clay pots or jars with infant skeletons inside of them. Because it was part of their religion. They believed that they needed to appease the god or get the god's blessing on this house by sacrificing a child. They would put that child in the jar and put it inside of the wall and cover that up with their plaster or their stucco. And so by the time the Israelites are getting ready to go in, it's been hundreds of years. The Canaanites have had plenty of time to stop doing this kind of stuff. And they haven't. It's obvious they're not going to. And so God is going to use the Israelites to judge these people. But why? What's the reason for their future success? Well, we know that it's God. But why is God doing it? Because we're so great, right? No, actually, it is because it's a condemnation of the wicked. Does God condemn the wicked? He does. But he gives lots and lots and lots of time for people to turn away from their wickedness. He gave me 20 years. 20 years to stop being wicked. 20 years. It's not just like, somebody's wicked and God sees that and is just like, hey, you know what, you're wicked and I'm going to destroy you. Obviously, because we're all here still, right? And there's all of us have had times of wickedness, times when we've done something sinful. God didn't just destroy us. He's patient. He's been patient with the Canaanites. But the reason that God is doing this, number one, is for the condemnation of the wicked. But there actually is a second reason why, and it's found in verse 5, and that is to keep his promise to their forefathers. It is not because, in verse 5, of your righteousness or the uprightness of your heart that you go in to possess their land. Why is it? I thought it was because of my righteousness. I thought it's because I was so great. Moses goes, no. But because of the wickedness of these nations, we already read that, condemnation of the wicked, that the Lord your God drives them out from before you. And, here's the second one, and that he may fulfill the word which the Lord swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those were their forefathers. God had promised to a man named Abraham and to Abraham's family, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. He had promised the promised land. He had promised them the land of Canaan. He had made promises to them. He had promised that the Messiah, Jesus, would eventually come through their family line. He made promises to them. And the reason that God is sending the Israelites into the promised land, the reason that they will be successful when they get to the promised land is because of God. Well, it's because the Israelites are so great, though, right? God's doing it, but it's because they're so great. No, actually, it's because he's condemning the wicked and because he's keeping a promise that he made to their forefathers. So you're like, well, does it have anything to do with me? Let's find out. Verse 6. Therefore, understand that the Lord your God is not giving you this good land to possess because of your righteousness, for you are a stiff-necked people. Does he mean stiff-necked, like in a good way? No. He's talking about stubborn. What he tells them there at the end, there's really two main reasons for their future success. The first is God. The second is not Israel. It's just God. That's it. The reason they are going to be successful in the future is because of God. It doesn't have anything to do with them. God's going to use them to accomplish his purpose, to accomplish his will. He's got a plan, and he's going to use them to do that. Now, he loves the Israelites. He loves them dearly. And he's been patient with them and provided for them. Even to this day, 2023, still. He loves them. But he doesn't love them because of anything great they've done, because they're so fantastic. No. Now, let's do something real quickly before we move to our second main division in verse 7 and on down to the bottom. Let's do this. Let me remind you, especially if you're brand new in here, let me remind you that what we are studying, this ancient document that we're studying, is thousands of years old. I wasn't there. You weren't there. So what does this have to do with me? Well, what we find out as we go through the Bible, in fact, if you go over to the book of Hebrews, we won't do that right now, but in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, we're told in the book of Hebrews that the things that were written, Old Testament, that the things that were written were examples for you and I. So we find things out about God and about mankind when we read the Old Testament. So how does this stuff, so far, just what we have, how does this apply to me? Well, we can be assured that the reason for our future success is God alone. That's it. It's not because of anything that I do or I'm going to do. At some point in the past, if you're a Christian, like I'm a Christian, you surrendered your life to Jesus. You surrendered. You said, man, I'm going to stop fighting. I need you, Jesus. I need to be saved. And then God began to work on your behalf. And there was a promise in the New Testament. Again, we're reading the Old Testament. There's a promise in the New Testament. It says this. It says that he who began a good work in you will be faithful to complete it. He who began a good work in you. Who's that? Who's he? What do you think? Who began a good work in you? Jesus. Will be faithful to complete it. There's a promise there. Will be faithful to complete it. In other words, God began a work in you. And he's going to finish it. What an incredible promise. However, that work that he began in you, the success that you're going to experience, really doesn't have anything to do with you. It's because God's got a plan, and he's accomplishing that plan, and that's what we want. Lord, just you do it. See, let me tell you the problem. Here's the challenge. If God is doing a special work because of me, if it's based on me, because I'm just such a great guy, well, I'm a really great guy on Sunday mornings. I got my Christian clothes on, teach the Bible. But on Monday mornings, I might not be such a great guy. I might be a big jerk because I'm trying to drive to the office and the freeways are crazy. And now I feel like killing somebody. And now all of a sudden my mindset or my attitude has changed completely from Sunday. You might do the same thing. Sundays, sure, Mom. But you want me to mop? Great, no problem, yes. But then when it's time to wake up on Monday morning, hey, son, daughter, get up. All of a sudden, you're just like demon-possessed, man. Get away. Stop touching me. You know, I'm not going to school or whatever. Your attitude can change. Your actions can change so quickly. Now, if God bases his work on you and I, it's going to be like this. He's going to be like, oh, they're saved. No, they're not saved anymore. Yeah, they're saved. No, they're not saved anymore. I'm working in them. No, I'm not working in them anymore. I'm still working in them. No, I give up. See, it can't be based on us. It has to be based on God and God only. And when it's based on God and God only, and God loves us, that means he continues his work no matter where I'm at. I'm like this. I'm like I got, different personalities or whatever. But God's work just continues. So that's why I want his work based on him and not me. And that's what he's telling the people here, and that's what the people are learning, and that's what you and I are learning. Now, he tells them there that they're a stiff-necked people. What does that mean? Stiff-necked doesn't mean that they got like a kink in their neck, and I can't move. What he means is stubborn. Stubborn. How many of you were stubborn when you were little kid? You were stubborn, yes? Okay. Probably there's still some of that probably left in you still, right? But you also, it's like you're kind of stubborn a little bit, but you also know that mom and dad used to beat your butt, and so you kind of like calm down a little bit, right? But there's still some stubbornness in there. But when you were stubborn, it's like, mom or dad would tell you, hey, don't touch the TV, and then you'd go and touch the TV. Hey, I told you not to touch the TV, stop. Pull you away or whatever, you go touch the TV again. Hey, I told you not to do that, boom, get a spank on the hand, stop. Touch the TV again, right? Get it on the bottom a little bit harder or whatever. They're trying to teach you, discipline you. That's the picture here. He says, listen, it has nothing to do, verse 6, it has nothing to do with you because you're a stiff-necked people. And we need to remember that. We would do well to remember that. That's going to help us keep the right mindset. That's going to help us from becoming proud and going, I did so well on my math test because, God loves me. Why wouldn't he? It's going to keep us humble. Go, you know what? Hey, someone goes, man, you did so good on that test. Hey, thank God. Thank God. Thank God because he blessed me with some brains to be able to do it. Remember back in the previous chapter 8, he actually told us that whatever abilities you have, you got those from God. And so we need to keep that in mind. Now, he calls them a stiff-necked people. He says, you're stubborn. He says, it's not you. You're not going to be successful because of you, because you're stubborn. And then what he does is he reminds them, remember that this study is called Reminders. And what he's doing is every chapter, he's reminding them. And now what he does in verse 7, all the way down to the bottom, is he reminds them of their stubborn past, of their rebellious history. Now, this is good for those of you that weren't here back when we started Deuteronomy, or even Leviticus, Numbers, all of those books. Because what we learned, in fact, back in Exodus, what we learned was that they got to a place called Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai, even if you do not recognize that name, Mount Sinai, what is that? Even if you do not recognize Mount Sinai, you will, all of you are familiar with the 10 Commandments. Everybody knows what those are. Well, at Mount Sinai is where Moses received the 10 Commandments. And he's going to describe that for us. And in the process, what he's going to do is he's going to relay that story for us about their rebellious history. Look at verse 7. Remember, he says with an exclamation mark. Do not forget how you provoked the Lord your God to wrath in the wilderness. From the day that you departed from the land of Egypt until you came to this place, you have been rebellious against the Lord. And the first way that they were rebellious, beginning at verse 8 and going all the way down to verse 21, was idolatry. They rebelled against God in idolatry. Look at verse 8. Also in Horeb. That is where Mount Sinai was. Also in Horeb, you provoked the Lord to wrath, so that the Lord was angry enough with you to have destroyed you. He's like, hey, listen, children of Israel, they're getting ready to go into the promised land, And he goes, listen, don't think that God is going to make you successful because of anything you did, because you're stubborn. In fact, he tells them, in Horeb, when we were there, God wanted to kill you. Imagine finding that out. God wanted to kill you. And so it says in verse 9, when I went up into the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant, which the Lord made with you, then I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. I neither ate bread nor drank water. That's crazy. Then the Lord delivered me 2 tablets of stone written with the finger of God, and on them were all the words which the Lord had spoken to you on the mountain from the midst of the fire in the day of the assembly. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days and 40 nights that the Lord gave me the 2 tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant. Then the Lord said to me, arise, go down quickly from here, for your people whom you brought out of Egypt have acted corruptly. They have quickly turned aside from the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded image. Now we'll talk about what the molded image is in just a minute. I don't know if you caught this, but Moses is up on Sinai. He's getting the 10 Commandments. Then all of a sudden, as he's getting the 10 Commandments, been up there 40 days and 40 nights, all of a sudden, God gives him the commandments, and then all of a sudden, God says this in verse 12. Arise. So get up, go down quickly from here. Okay, get off of Mount Sinai, go down. For your people whom you brought out of Egypt have acted corruptly. They were down there worshiping a golden image, an idol. But did you catch it? It's funny. I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on this, but it is funny. When the people started acting stupid, when they got involved in idolatry, idol worship, God says to Moses, Moses, you got to get up, you got to get down that hill, because your people that you brought out of Egypt are down there worshiping an idol. Now, if you're Moses, if I was Moses, I would have been like, wait a minute. Did you say my people? I brought them out of Egypt? I only did that because you told me to bring them out of Egypt. These are your people. And in fact, in a few minutes, we'll see it. Moses is actually going to do the same thing back. He's going to say, listen, these are your people that you redeemed, that you brought out of Egypt, that you did these, and he's going to throw it back on them. And you see this kind of like tug of war where instead of pulling, they're like pushing, like, these are your people. No, they're not my people. You ever hear your mom go to your dad, that's your daughter, right? Some of you are like, yeah, I can see, I can tell, right? Or your mom will go to your dad, that is your son. Okay? Tell him to stop wearing those socks. He's been wearing them for a week. That's your son, right? They do that. They'll throw, it depends. Oh, no, that's your daughter. She's just like you. Yep. Right? My wife will say that about my son. That is your son. He is just like you when you were in high school. It's like, what are you talking about? What God is doing is he's telling Moses, like, hey, man, I'm getting ready to destroy these people. These are your people. I'm done with them. God, it seems like God is just like, nah, get rid of them. And so in verse 13, he goes, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention verse 12. Again, in case you were not here for that episode, when he mentions the golden calf or the molded image, that's the episode, the golden calf episode. And what happened was, Moses gets back down the hill. He's got these 10 commandments. Can you imagine running down the hill? He hasn't eaten or drank anything for like 40 days. Be all hungry and tired. And he gets back down the hill, and he finds that the people, the Israelites, are down there at the bottom. And instead of waiting patiently for Moses to come back down after hearing from God, instead of waiting patiently, they put all of their gold together, and they made a golden image, a golden calf, an idol. And then they began to worship it. And they were actually down there partying. And we find out later that there was a sexual perversion involved in the worship of that golden idol. These people were a hot mess. Hot mess. And so Moses comes running back down. Well, let's find out what happens. And so it says, furthermore, in verse 13, the Lord spoke to me, saying, I have seen this people, and indeed they are a stiff-necked people. And God says in verse 14, let me alone, leave me alone, that I may destroy them and blot out their name from under heaven, and I will make of you a nation mightier and greater than they. What did God say to Moses? He's like, Moses, these are your people, and they're a mess. And he tells Moses, leave me alone. I'm going to kill all these people, and then I'm going to start a new nation with you, Moses. I don't know. I might have gone for that. Like, yeah, we just got out of Egypt. These people are already causing me grief. That's not such a bad idea, Lord. Maybe you should just wipe them out. Let's just start over. Take all my best traits. We'll make a new people, Moses doesn't do that, though. Good on Moses. Because he goes on to say this. So I turned and came down from the mountain, verse 15. And the mountain burned with fire. And the 2 tablets of the covenant were in my 2 hands. Okay? He's carrying these things down. Now, it's funny. We always picture the 10 Commandments being like super big. Do you? Like if you think about the 10 Commandments, do you think of that classic picture where it's like this slab of stone and the top is rounded, and you got 2 sets and they're really big and you got to like walk like this or whatever. You can't carry both of them. And yet he mentions that as he came down the mountain, it says that he burned with fire, and the 2 tablets of the covenant were in my 2 hands. So maybe they weren't that big, whatever. Just a weird little thing that I caught. Verse 16, Moses says, and I looked, and behold, you had sinned against the Lord your God, had made for yourselves a molded calf, a golden calf, a baby cow. That's what they were worshiping. You had turned aside quickly from the way which the Lord had commanded you. Then I took the 2 tablets and threw them out of my 2 hands and broke them before your eyes. And I fell down before the Lord as at the first 40 days and 40 nights. I neither ate bread nor drank water because of all your sin which you committed in doing wickedly in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. For I was afraid of the anger and hot displeasure with which the Lord was angry with you to destroy you. But the Lord listened to me at that time also. And the Lord was very angry with Aaron and would have destroyed him. So I prayed for Aaron also at the same time. Then I took your sin, the calf which you had made, and burned it with fire, and crushed it, and ground it very small, until it was as fine as dust. And I threw its dust into the brook that descended from the mountain. So Moses explaining that this is what happened, this is what took place. Now I think it's funny that at the end in verse 21, well, not the end, but at this point in verse 21, he says to them, and I threw its dust into the brook that descended from the mountain. And he leaves out a small part. Moses came down, saw the golden calf, destroyed it, crushed it, ground it into powder, threw it in the water, and then made the people drink it. He left that out. He's like, yeah, let's not talk about that. In verse 22, beginning in verse 22, also at Taberah and Massah and Kibroth Hattaavah, you provoked the Lord to wrath. In fact, in verse 23, likewise, when the Lord sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, go up and possess the land which I have given you, then you rebelled against the commandment of the Lord your God. And you did not believe him nor obey his voice. You have been rebellious against the Lord from the day that I knew you. So here's the next one. Their rebellious history included idolatry and then a refusal. They just refused to go into the promised land. We're not going. Nope. God told them to do something expressly. And they just said, no, not doing that. They've always been rebellious. Let's move along and finish this up. Because in verse 25, on down to the bottom, what we see is the intercession of Moses. Even though the people have been rebellious, Moses intercedes or stands on their behalf or prays for them. Let's see what he does in verse 25. Thus I prostrated myself. To prostrate himself means that he laid himself out flat in front of the Lord. So he just laid himself out in the dirt. Thus I prostrated myself before the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. I kept prostrating myself because the Lord had said he would destroy you. Therefore I prayed. Look at this in verse 26. Watch the words carefully. Therefore I prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord God, do not destroy your people and your inheritance, whom you have redeemed through your greatness, whom you have brought out of Egypt with a mighty hand. See, Moses just threw the people back on God, like, no, these are not my people. These are your people. It's like a couple of parents fighting over, like, no, these are not my kids, man. These are your kids. Verse 27, remember your servants, Moses says in his prayer, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Do not look on the stubbornness of this people. Overlook it, or on their wickedness or their sin. Lest the land from which you brought us should say, because the Lord was not able to bring them to the land which he promised them, and because he hated them, he has brought them out to kill them in the wilderness. Moses actually says to God, listen, don't destroy them, because we came from Egypt, and if you destroy them, then you're going to have a bad name in Egypt. I don't know if you remember, but back in Exodus when God was taking them out of Egypt, God actually said, I want the Egyptians to know that I've got a great name. That was his reason for rescuing his people. I want the Egyptians to know that I've got a great name. So he says, if you destroy these people now, you're not going to have a great name, God. He's reasoning with God. And finally in verse 29, yet Moses says, they are your people and your inheritance, whom you brought out by your mighty power and by your outstretched arm. There is that hilarious bent to it where, it's like, no, these are your people. No, they're not. Those are your people. I'm going to destroy your people. No, those are not my people. Those are your people. You need to save them. But Moses standing in the gap. Wonderful lesson as we close up, and it is this. For you and I, let us never think that the reason for our success is us. It is because we are being blessed by God, because God is leading us, directing us, providing for us. If you have the ability to play baseball and hit a little white ball with a wooden stick, not everybody has that hand-eye coordination. If you've got it, it's because you've been blessed by God with that. Can you kick a ball into a net or connect a pass from here to there? Not everybody can do that. You've got the ability to do that. But maybe it's academic. Are you able to get a good grade on a science test? I was not when I was younger. Not everybody can do that. You've been blessed with that ability. Whatever it is that you can do, if you can ride a horse really well, Maybe you really know how to take care of animals. I don't. Maybe you really know how to take care of plants. I kill them. But maybe you know how to bring them back to life. That's an ability that you've been given by God. And so in every area of life, we understand, hey, if I'm being successful, it's because God is blessing me. Father, thank you so much for today and for your word.